Detective Emily Harper adjusted her coat as she stepped out of her car, the crunch of gravel underfoot breaking the uneasy silence. Stillwater was a small, unassuming town nestled between the hills, the very reason why she moved here. She fell in love with the peace and simplicity it offered. Lately, however, it had earned a new reputation. Livestock had been turning up mutilated. The farmers claimed it was some kind of creature, and though she wasn't one to buy into local superstition, something strange was happening here. The evening sky had darkened, and a biting wind blew across the desolate farmland. Harper had been called out to the latest site of destruction, an isolated ranch on the outskirts of Stillwater. The sheriff asked for her help because of her experience in handling strange cases. A cluster of anxious farmers stood by their trucks, whispering amongst themselves, faces pale under the moon's dim light. Detective Harper, a grizzled farmer named Hank, walked over, his eyes heavy with worry. "It's getting worse. Ain't no wolf or bear could have done this." He pointed to the barn, where the remains of several sheep lay scattered. Blood soaked the earth, and the air was thick with the stench of death. Harper knelt next to the remains, trying to control her breath. The sheep had been ripped apart, not just torn like an animal attack, but shredded with a violent, unnatural force. Deep claw marks ran through the carcasses, but the spacing was too wide for any predator she knew. Stranger still, there were no tracks, no prints in the soft dirt, no sign of anything leaving or entering. "Y'all been seeing anything? Hear anything out of the ordinary?" Harper asked, standing up and wiping her hands on her jeans. "Yeah," Hank muttered, glancing nervously at the woods beyond his ranch. "We've seen something big, moves fast, faster than anything I've ever seen, and it ain't quiet neither. There's this shriek." His voice cracked as he spoke, like the memory alone was too much. "Shriek?" Harper frowned. "Like a banshee," another farmer interjected, his voice barely above a whisper. "Comes out when the sun goes down. Last night, we heard it, and this morning, well, you see what's left." Harper felt a chill creep up her spine. She wasn't one to be scared off by campfire stories, but the way these grown men spoke these men who had lived their whole lives here, hardened by years of farming, there was something in their eyes that made her uneasy. "All right," she said. "I'll stake it out tonight. If there's something out there, we'll find it." The farmers exchanged uneasy glances, but didn't argue. They wrapped the remains of their beloved sheep and carried them out to one of the trucks. As they left, Harper was left standing alone in the growing darkness. She clicked on her flashlight and headed for the barn. She would set up camp in the loft. It was the perfect vantage point. From there, she could see the entire field and the thick forest that bordered it. If anything moved, she'd know. She laid out a pair of steel bear traps near the door and covered them with hay, just to be sure. Hours passed in tense silence. The wind howled through the trees, but otherwise, the night was still. Harper felt her eyelids growing heavy when she heard it. At first, faint and distant, then growing louder. A shriek. It wasn't a howl or the scream of any animal she'd ever heard. It was something otherworldly, a high-pitched wail that cut through the air like a blade. Harper bolted upright, heart racing. She grabbed her flashlight and her gun, her pulse quickening. The sound was coming from the edge of the woods. She scanned the tree line, her beam catching only the swaying branches and the occasional flicker of eyes from nocturnal animals. And then, movement, a shadow, tall and impossibly fast, darting between the trees. Harper tensed, tracking the movement. It was heading toward the barn, her breath caught in her throat as the figure broke free of the forest. It wasn't human, but it wasn't entirely animal either. The creature was massive, its body covered in matted fur, with limbs too long for its torso. Its eyes gleamed in the moonlight, cold, intelligent, and hungry. Harper ran down the rickety stairs and aimed her flashlight at it. The creature stopped, turning its head toward her. For a moment, they locked eyes, and Harper felt a wave of primal fear she hadn't known existed. Her hand shook as she raised her gun, but before she could fire, the creature let out another bone-chilling scream and lunged forward. It moved with unnatural speed, and Harper barely had time to roll out of the way as it crashed into the barn, sending wooden beams flying. She scrambled to her feet, adrenaline surging, and fired 3 shots at the creature's chest, but to no effect. It surged forward and howled in pain when the steel trap snapped around its feet. Harper backed up, her mind racing. This thing was too fast, too strong. She couldn't take it head on. Her eyes darted around the barn, searching for something, anything, that could give her an edge. And then she saw it. A lantern hanging on a hook, next to a pile of old farming equipment. With the creature closing in, Harper grabbed the lantern and smashed it against the ground, setting the hay on fire. Flames erupted, and the creature recoiled, its shrieks filling the night as the fire spread quickly, crackling and roaring. The barn lit up, casting long shadows across the field. Harper stumbled backward, her eyes locked on the beast as it writhed in the flames, its screams piercing the night. The fire consumed it, and finally, with one last terrible wail, the creature collapsed into the inferno. Harper stood there, panting, her skin slick with sweat as the barn burned around her. The creature was dead, but what chilled her was seeing the skeleton it left behind. It was human, not animal, an image that would haunt her forever. When the farmers returned, the next morning, they found the barn reduced to smoldering ashes, and Detective Harper, sitting on the ground, staring at the horizon, waiting for the sun to rise. Whatever that thing had been, it used to be human. Killing it didn't answer her questions, but only raised more. At least, Stillwater was safe for now, but Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and evil lurked in those woods. And perhaps, somewhere out there, more of these creatures waited. Harper's fingers tightened around her pistol. She, too, would be waiting.